When one of us speaks, we both feel the words moving on our tongues. When one of us eats, we both feel the food slipping down our gullets. It would have surprised neither of us to have found slit open that we shared organs, that one's lungs breathed for the both, that a single heart beat a doubling, feverish pulse.
Well, you just heard British author Daisy Johnson with a flavour of just how creepily close those two siblings are in her novel Sisters, released here in France as Sœurs. Daisy, thanks so much for joining us on the show.
Thank you so much for having me on. So good to be talking to you.
Well, indeed, those two sisters are intensely, truly bound together. They're named July and September, which suggests just how close they are in age. They're teenagers. And it appears that September is the more dominant personality. I wanted to know how you saw that relationship when you set out to write the book and how it evolved.
Yeah, so the book changed a lot as I was writing, as every book I write does. It sort of begins as one thing and turns into something else. And the more I wrote, the more I knew that I wanted to write about this relationship, which as the reader and also as the characters were never really sure what the boundaries of it are and if it's a good relationship or a bad relationship. And I think it's also one of those relationships where one person, as you say, is very much the dominant one. And the other person is sort of much more passive. And I wanted to explore what that does to someone and how that changes them. Yeah, it was a really interesting relationship to write about.
Yeah, and it's really quite slippery. Like you say, you can't get a handle on what their relationship is. Now, the book really centres on the tension of a domestic setup involving three women, July, September, and their mother, Sheila. I was really interested in the depiction of this mother who, from her daughter's point of view, you write, is in rooms the way chairs and tables are. She's part of the furniture. But when we see things from her perspective, her feelings about her life and her feelings are much more complex. What did you want to explore about mothers and their role with this character?
Yeah, so the whole novel is set in a small house in Yorkshire where the two sisters and their mother have gone to live. And Sheila's voice begins to come through. We hear sort of fragments from her. And I was really interested in exploring a mother character who isn't necessarily very comfortable with the role. You know, she has a lot of things going on herself. She really struggles with her mental health. And she also has, as you say, this overriding feeling that her daughters don't really need her, which is really, really difficult for her. Her relationship with her daughters is also tangled up with her relationship with their father, which was a very difficult, troubled one. And I'm continuously, I think, in everything I write, interested in writing about mothers and what it's like to be a mother and how, how I think mothers really fight against the roles society tries to put on them.
Indeed. Now, it was also fascinating to see how contemporary phenomena like dating websites, internet bullying, or humiliation on the internet was brought into a literary narrative in Sisters. Now, the cruelty of the internet, or the cruelty of people's use of the internet, is a really effective plot device here. How do you see these tools and platforms from a social perspective?
Yeah, I was so interested to write about that because I think it's such an important part of being a teenager now. And even when I was a teenager, social media was beginning to get big. And I think it really changes not only your relationship with other people and how you interact with them, but also your relationship with yourself and how you see yourself. And I think I wanted to give it an almost haunted feeling, that the social media and the way the girls are using it, which is often in quite a dangerous or an endangering way, their relationship is quite troubled with it and begins to feel a little like it's haunted.
Indeed, it's not a coincidence that the word ghosting is used with the internet, I suppose. Now, your writing has often been attached to the gothic genre because of the psychological tension and the sense of creeping horror that you manage to create in your stories. Now, is that categorization something that you identify with, and is it something that you set out to achieve?
Yeah, it is. I really love horror. I was born on Halloween, so sort of grew up reading
Wow.
horror stories, yeah, unsurprisingly, and watching horror films. And I think it's such an amazing time for the genre. You know, I think people like Jordan Peele in film are doing really fantastic things, and writers are beginning to really explore what horror can do and what it can give and what it can tell us about the world we live in. And I think horror, although it's often scary and very entertaining, it's always about something else. You know, it's always about what it means to live now, and that really fascinates me.
About deeper fears, indeed. Now, Daisy, I believe that you are a bookseller yourself, so you'll be pleased to hear this latest report, which has some good news from the publishing industry here in France. When books were deemed non-essential items during the lockdown, outrage followed. People insisted that they should have the right to purchase reading material, and now that bookstores are open, they're putting their money where their mouths are, so to speak. Catherine Clifford-Kadir has more.
No quiet moment after the festive season for this bookshop. Customers are back already in search of new treasure.
Est-ce que vous auriez le livre de Laurent Mouvignier?
Histoire de la nuit? Oui,
Est-ce que
voilà.
la nuit?
Il est là.
Merci.
C'est un magnifique roman.
Merci beaucoup. Ça, j'ai très envie. Pour moi, la littérature, c'est la vie.
Literature is my life, and I'm trying to pass it on to my grandchildren too.
A life that was put on hold as French bookshops closed their doors during the first lockdown. When they reopened in May, customers flocked to their shelves.
What lockdown has changed is the desire to buy in bulk, because between the two lockdowns, we didn't know how long we would be able to come and stock up.
A study found 54% of French people have rediscovered the pleasure of reading this year, while 28% say they've taken refuge in books.
J'ai un compagnon pendant le temps d'un livre.
As long as I'm reading a book, I have a companion. When they annoy me, I give up on them.
Ça, j'aime pas.
But most of the time, I live through the story.
On vit une petite histoire, quoi.
France's 3 top bestsellers this year are all thrillers by Joel Dicker, Hervé Letellier, who won France's top literary prize, the Goncourt, for 2020, and Guillaume Musso.
People felt a lack of cultural activities this year, so threw themselves into reading. We had a very successful month in December.
At this bookshop, this feel-good novel is topping sales after being highly recommended by staff.
Quand vous sortez de ce livre, vous êtes...
When you finish this book, you're happy, reassured, you've had a good time. It's all positive. And a lot of people are asking us for positive books, nothing too dark, which will bring them down. So that's what's great about this one.
Thanks to the click and collect system used by many, the sector saw just a 5% drop in sales for 2020, a far lighter loss than feared.
So that data coming out of bookshops does look very reassuring. Daisy, have you found your reading habits changing during the lockdowns?
Yeah, I think they have, and it's really interesting talking to other people because I think everyone's have. I think in some cases people are really struggling to read, and I think our attention spans are very sort of short, and because we're all a bit anxious. But on the other hand, I think people are reading more, and I've certainly read a lot more this year and read things that I don't think I would have read otherwise. I've gone looking for different kind of books, and I think it's really wonderful that it's always really telling what people turn to in difficult times. I think it's so wonderful that people have turned to books as a sort of a way out and a release and a way to talk to one another when we're not really able to see one another.
What did you turn to? Escapist literature or something more classic?
I actually read a lot more non-fiction than I normally read, which was really interesting. I read actually Annie Ernaux for the first time, and I think I was just looking for different things that I hadn't experienced before, which was actually really exciting and interesting.
Certainly one positive. Now, literature is notoriously a precarious profession. More published writers have a secondary source of income than don't. But you threw yourself into it very young. You were shortlisted for the Man Booker Prize at just 27, the youngest writer ever to feature on that list. And I was interested to see that a character in your latest book, Sheila, is a writer and illustrator, and she doesn't seem to find that creative life very easy. Is that a commentary on your chosen field?
Yeah, I think it is. It's really wonderful being a writer, but it is also very isolating. You have to be alone a lot and alone in your own head, and there's often not very much guidance on how to do it. And I think I wanted to try and explore that in Sisters, sort of explore the isolation and how that can be hard. I've been incredibly lucky. I think that the Booker Prize really changed my writing experience and means that I can do it full time. But I think, as with anyone doing, being self-employed, there is that sort of constant slight panic about doing the thing you love and trying to make money from it.
Mm-hmm. Now, recently, artists, especially musicians, have waded into politics when it comes to the UK's exit from the EU, launching a petition calling for freedom of movement for performers, especially musicians, when it comes to tours. Visa-free travel for artists ended up not being in the Brexit deal. How do you feel about this new chapter for the UK, and how do you think it will affect the arts?
Yeah, I mean, in general, I'm just incredibly disappointed with the decision that we made and that we decided to leave the EU. I think it's really important that that artists can travel freely. A massive, massive part of my experience as a writer has been coming to France and coming to Belgium and coming to Holland and talking to writers. And I think that is so, it's so wonderful to share creatively in that way and to feel like we're all giving each other different things. Yeah, so I'm very disappointed, and I hope that we'll be able to do something about it. But it's been it's been a while where the UK hasn't done particularly well.
Now, finally, we asked you for a cultural pick, something you've enjoyed recently, and you named the series The Undoing, starring Nicole Kidman and Hugh Grant. What is it about that show that grabbed you?
Yeah, so we've been watching actually a lot of real sort of 90s classic movies. And then my mum actually recommended this series. So we thought, let's sit down and watch it. And it's, for anyone who hasn't seen it, it's a TV series about Nicole Kidman and Hugh Grant are married, and something quite devastating happens in their sort of social circle, and Hugh Grant is blamed. And I think it's all about what happens when the person you're closest to isn't quite maybe who you think they are. And I think, if for nothing else, it's a really great TV show to watch, to see those two actors really doing their thing.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for the tip, Daisy, and thank you so much for joining us today. We'll leave you with a taste of The Undoing, which is currently available on HBO. Do remember to check out our website for more arts and culture, and our social media feeds too. There's more news coming up on France 24 just after this.
Hey.
Hey.
Just one moment of your time. One moment.
It's what rich, entitled people do when threatened. They conceal the ugly truths to protect themselves. And they think they can get away with it.
It's the world seen from Paris. Hi everyone, I'm François Picard. Join us for the France 24 debate, the crossroads between different perspectives, rival interests, and your feedback. Only on France 24 and France24.com.